councillors, senior staff members, members of the public in the gallery, and welcome to everyone, including Emily in the press gallery. Thank you for being with us for this our December Ordinary Council meeting, the last one for the calendar year of 2021. And I think we are all looking forward to a good Christmas break following this night's activities. Councillors and members in the community, in the gallery, I will advise you that this meeting is being live streamed, and we would be aware, I guess is what I'm saying, that if you're going to make statements, they'll travel around the district fairly quickly, I suspect. It's appropriate that we acknowledge country, and I'd ask that you take note of this. The Shire of Esperance acknowledges the Noongar and the Naju people, who are the traditional custodians of this land and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians today. Okay, we move into the agenda, and the attendance is, we have all councillors present. Thank you very much. Are there any apologies? Staff members are all with us as well. Directors and the CEO. Okay, so then all in attendance. We go to then item, get into the right slide here, we go to applications for leave of absence. Any councillors seeking to leave of absence? No councillors seeking leave of absence, thank you. That's item 4. Item 5, announcements by the person presiding. There's nothing to announce tonight that I have in particular. We go to declarations of members' interests. Are there any councillors declaring financial interest on any item? Not. Then we go to declaration of proximity interest. Any councillors declaring proximity interests? I take it, councillors, you've seen the email explaining the issue that was raised, the question that was raised with us concerning proximity interests during the course of the last week. Okay. Then we go to item 6.3, declarations of impartiality interest. Any declarations of impartiality? Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare a impartiality interest in item 12.3.8 as one of the, which is the debt recovery outstanding rates, as one of the properties listed as my in-laws.
Are there any further declaration of proximity? Councillor McMullen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to declare a impartiality interest in item 17.2, waive rates for Esperance Hotel A/281, as my parents own a licensed venue in the CBD.
Thank you. Any further impartiality interests? No further impartiality. So then we go to item 7, which is public question time. Now, I do have some people who have listed here. Certainly, Dr. Newkirk, you have a question. And so I'll invite you to come forward to the lectern, please.
Excellent. You can, yes. Okay, I've got a question regarding a block on Ocean Street. If we can see a picture. I understand that this area is controlled by the Shire for getting access to sand. This issue has been brought to attention of council staff, I believe, before. And it reminds me a little bit about a comment made by Councillor Chambers in the last council meeting, saying that it only takes a couple of seconds to change a life. Kids have been seen to play on this sand surface, and it only takes a small sand slide for a kid to get buried under the sand. My question really is, can something be done, maybe putting some netting over it so that the kids can't play on that, particularly now that we have school holidays?
Thank you, Dr. Newkirk. Mr. Walker, do you wish to make comment on this item?
Yeah, it's obviously an active construction site where we're removing the sand from those properties with agreement from the property owners. It's really hard to keep people out of these sites, actually fencing them off and doing any of that. They'll just jump fences unless you put something monstrosity there. So yeah, I guess we just try to batter it back so it's a reasonable thing, but it's tricky to do while it's an active construction site.
Yeah, I don't know whether they're every day collecting sand, but maybe some netting that can be put over it easily and say taken away when people mine the sand. That's all we ask.
Thank you, Dr. Newkirk. Well, thank you for drawing it to our attention. You have a further question?
Yes, the other thing I wanted to mention, and again, it's something that was very close to my property. We had a massive fire at the reserve near 14 Mile Beach, 11 Mile Beach, and I just would like to express my gratitude and appreciation for what was done by DFAS, the Pink Lake Fire Brigade, the Town Fire Brigade, 6 Mile Hill who were there, and Park and Wildlife. I think they did a magnificent job. I'd like to thank the Shire for their involvement in it. I think it could have been disastrous, and it was handled extremely well. So I just want to express my gratitude for that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those words, Dr. Newkirk, and we appreciate that. As I understand, the fire is still active at the present time, so there's still work being done there to endeavour to manage the fire. Perhaps not close to you, sir, but it's not fully extinguished yet, as I understand. Okay, the next one is Mr. Smoker. Do you have a question, sir?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I know with some encouragement the last time I was out on the new jetty, which was back in October, that there's been some effort made in cleaning up the splitting stains on display boards in the sheds down the back. I just went out today and noticed that they are relatively clean. But on the ceiling of the second shed from from Anne, I've got a photograph of from 2 months ago and a photograph of today, and it's got considerably worse. And it's pretty hard to see from this distance, but I can leave these photographs on the bench here if necessary. My question is there any way that these stains can be painted over? It's just that it's pretty ugly for people visiting. It's one of the first things you see. I know it's on the ceiling, but it's so visible because it's so dark against the white background. And I realise that with the display boards, they've probably got a protective cover. After all, they have to stand the salt air and so forth. And as I say, they have been cleaned up. But it's the ceilings which appear to be a problem. So the question is there any way in which they can be cleaned up? And is there any way in which we could possibly avoid this sort of situation happening in the future? Maybe got signs, like without being aggressive, but being sort of asking, please respect, the contents of these sheds, or something along that line. Has anybody got any answers?
Thank you for bringing this to our notice, Mr. Smoker. I did have a resident of Esperance advise me about it today. I think that resident and Councillor Orban had been out there and cleaned it up previously. That's why you saw some of it was a little better than it might have been before. But yeah, we have to find a way to address that. It is graffiti, in my mind. It is people, just doing what they should not do, and desecrating our community and a place like that, we have to find some ways that we can address the issue and firstly clean it up, but address the issue going forward. And so we would like anyone to that is actually a person who might be seen desecrating that area, that the member of the public sees it, we would like them to report it back to us at the council so that we can take some actions. But it's pretty difficult to catch them.
Yes.
Okay.
If I could just add something to that, I thought about this myself and I thought, well, instead of actually accusing somebody of creating graffiti, I'm a fish person myself and I have caught squid in the past, and it's quite amazing how far the squid ink can squirt. So I'm not suggesting that these marks are deliberate, and that's why I was suggesting the possible aside, you know, to ask people, please don't clean your squid in their sheds. Maybe that might work. It's only an idea.
Well, it's a great suggestion. We'll try that one first, perhaps. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Walker, did you have any comment on the squid ink on the jetty? Okay, thank you. Okay, the next one's Mr. Heisman. I don't have a marking on yours, Mr. Heisman. Did you wish to ask a question on the matter you were brought forward?
Thank you, Mr. President. It was more a concern and interest statement. I think a declaration's already been, it's item 17.2, but I see that it's a matter that's going to be discussed behind closed doors. I'm hoping that there will be some opportunity for some general discussion prior to you going behind closed doors, because I think it is a matter that concerns not only the commercial aspects of non-collection of rates or waiver of rates, but as a person that represents a considerable amount of rates that are paid into the Shire for properties that I represent, I certainly have an interest in what the outcome might be, and so that's the purpose of my presentation today.
Thank you. Well, I'll grant you a bit of an exemption. Normally it's question time, but if you want to make a stronger statement, feel free to do that. You said your question whether there was going to be any discussion. Well, there won't be any discussion in open council. It will be in behind closed doors. So.
All right. Well, if you can grant me a few minutes, I'd be happy to fill that with my concerns. And they are twofold. One was the fact that the premises that we're talking about, the Esperance Hotel, was sold on the commercial market to a purchaser who seems to have been afforded a little more latitude as far as repair and renovation of what is a substantial premises on our main street in this town. I can't think of any other town where that would be allowed and permitted. I know Geraldton, where there was non-occupation of sites in their CBD, basically double rated those premises as an inducement for them, for the owners, to repair, renovate those premises and get them occupied. I think it's a blight on our town that those premises have sat for that long in the condition that they are. Nobody's even attempted to clean the dust off the windows. So I can understand that they may not be prepared at this stage to renovate, but I think they could at least go and black all the windows out or something so it's not the eyesore that it is. And it appears that such a request has not been made, which I find as a commercial property owner in this town a blight on the presentation, I guess, of what is Andrew Street. It should be our premier street, together with Dempster. So I find that strange that no attempt has been made to rectify that. I'll leave the corner block alone with the gravel, both sides. I know that that's an issue that the council's been dealing with. But to even consider a rate exemption, I would find very unpalatable as a ratepayer. We've all been through difficult times in this town, and a particular premises that I'm involved with, Centrepoint, has had a large area unoccupied for a long time. Not so much now, but over the years. Well, we had to pay full rates on all of that. And there's been economic downturns. If you purchase a property, you pay the going rate. And I know what price they acquired that property for, and they did very well. And I think they have to do the honourable thing and that is meet their obligations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Heisman. So I think that concludes the public question time. Everybody's had a chance to have their say. Let's move on then, councillors. We go to the public addresses and deputations. There's no deputations. Thank you. Petitions. Are there any petitions? Then we go to item 10, which is the confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting of the 23rd of November. Someone prepared to move the confirmation. Moved by Councillor O'Donnell, seconded by Councillor Tahas. It's moved and seconded. I don't believe it needs any debate, councillors, so I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried. 9 votes to nil. We move on then to the delegates' reports without discussion, and they'll come up on the screen in a moment. Councillor Oborne, do you have anything to add to your list? Thank you. Councillor Flanagan.
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor O'Donnell.
No, thank you, as tabled.
You. Councillor, we go to Councillor
As tabled.
Graham. Councillor De Haas. Councillor Horan.
Fine, thank you.
Councillor McMullen.
As tabled, thank you.
Councillor Chambers.
As tabled, thank you, Chair.
And mine is there as tabled. I'd just highlight to you, councillors, I did put in there the small numbers in the schools at Munglanup and Salmon-Gums, and it hasn't come through with the printing, obviously, but there are 9 students at Munglanup, and there are 16 students this year at Salmon-Gums. They're certainly battling some of our satellite schools in number-wise, but in quality of presentation, they were absolutely fantastic, and I'd like to highlight that one to you as well. Thank you. I think that's all of our reports. Thank you, councillors, for representing council in all those different places and over the past month. So that brings us to the business section of the meeting, and we go to item 12.1, external services, and item 12.1.1 is proposed food organic garden organic services. Is someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation, which is on page 26 of our agenda? Councillor Oborne.
Yes, Mr. President, I move the officer's recommendation that council receive the findings of the Food Organics Garden Organics FOGO survey. Note the community-wide support exists for the introduction of a FOGO collection service for the Esperance community, and note the indicative timeframes for communications and engagement activities associated with the proposed FOGO service.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Oborne. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor De Haas. Councillor Oborne, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, I would like to channel my inner Natalie Bowman and bring out the Council Bible and remind ourselves of the community's intent in the Strategic Community Plan from way back in 2017. They said they want to be a community that is a leading example for waste management, a community that is empowered and motivated to minimise waste, and they want to research alternative forms of waste management with the aim of reducing dependency on landfill, and FOGO diverts more than 50% of what would have gone into landfill into a way to reuse basically our waste and bring it back as compost for people's gardens, either commercially or just residentially, which is a fantastic result, and it's cheaper than landfill. So it's a win-win-win in the triple bottom line, and I urge you to support this.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Councillor De Haas is the seconder of the motion. Do you wish to speak in favour?
I don't have any more to add to it than Jennifer has already said.
Okay.
Well done.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? There's no speaker against or no amendment. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against? That is carried. 9 votes to nil. So we go to asset management now. Item 12.2.1, the disposal of a Toyota Coaster bus. Are there any questions you might have to staff on this item? No questions to staff. Then there's a recommendation on page 28 of your agenda. Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Mover Councillor Oram.
Bus to Esperance Education Support Centre as per the offer of $66,000 including GST via the public notice as per section 3.8 bracket 3 bracket A of the Local Government Act 1995.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there seconded to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Flanagan. You wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Oram?
No, I think it's pretty well covered, thank you.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Flanagan, do you wish to speak for it?
Pretty straightforward. It's just good to see that the vehicle is going to be retained for the use of the Esperance communities.
Thank you. So is there a speaker against or an amendment to the motion? There's no speaker against and no amendment. I put to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is carried. So we move on to corporate and community services, and we have item 12.3.1, council committees, terms of reference review. Any questions you might have on this one to Mrs. Baxter? There's no questions. I'd ask, is there a mover of the motion, which is on page 35 of your agendas? Anyone prepared to move?
Councillors, I'll just note that there's a couple of more working groups that were just excluded from note 3, so we've just included them in.
Right.
Because I think they were missing, there was a number of them missing.
So they're up there in the motion now, are they? The recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Can we just see that?
Can you highlight those, please, Mrs. Baxter? Oh, those, sorry, that's what you've highlighted with the computer, yep.
So there's the business roundtable, there's the cemetery, disability access, and tourism, strategy working group, and sustainability.
Okay. Right, so those have been added in. So councillors, if someone's willing to move, you are including those over and above the written document that you may have been referring to. Do you have any questions to Mrs. Baxter on that now? Are those added in?
They're included in section 3 and then also in section 6.
Okay, all right, so we have them added in there. So councillors, you have a recommendation on page 35. Doesn't include those lists that have just been put up on the board, so you're referring to the electronic copy that's up there now, and if you're moving the motion. Nobody wants to move it? Move by Councillor O'Donnell. Well, I'm not going to ask you to read through it, Councillor O'Donnell, but I think what you're saying is the recommendation that's on page 35.
I move the officer's recommendation.
So, councillors, we did have a workshop on this, and I just want to say that we do have the councillors listed there that we did speak about when we did workshop it.
Yeah.
Council may want to just make sure that it was what you thought it was, and then, or else you might want to make changes to it before you move those names to be included.
Okay, so those names, I thought we had them in at the agenda briefing, but we obviously, what you're saying to me, we didn't have them in as such. Can we get that up so people can read? Now go back up to the top, please, and then we'll read as we go through. Okay, so just make sure those are the ones that you put your name against. And we just about got the top of them there. We're working our way down on them now. Have a look at them as we go. Anyone vividly arguing that they didn't put their name against them? There's a name missing there, isn't it? Deputy on that one. Councillor Chambers is the delegate, but
I think we did speak about you being on there, Councillor Mickle, at the time, I recall. I think you were away. But we did say that Councillor Chambers would be and that you would probably attend a lot of those anyhow, so you may want to deputise.
Well, that's fine. I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that, as long as we got them in right
Do I
tonight.
remember that discussion?
Senior Citizens Management Committee. Yeah, okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Well done,
Anyone else wishing to put their hand up in the tourism Esperance? Budding tourism people? Oh, they're thinking. Okay, tourism Esperance. Put me in there if you've got to fill the gap. No, Councillor Flanagan. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move down through them and make sure we've got the whole filled in. That's it, is it? Yeah. Okay, councillors. Now we've got the list of all the committees. We've filled in the names. Is someone prepared to move the motion? I thought I did have a mover. Councillor O'Donnell, you indicated, and I said you didn't have to read that long motion with all those names. So I've got a mover. Is there a seconder to the? Councillor De Haas has seconded it. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you. I think it's self-explanatory. Everybody knows what group they're on, committee they're on. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there
That's what they do.
a speaker against? Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak in favour of it?
No.
Okay. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against? No amendments? Requires an absolute majority, councillors, to make this decision, so I'll put the motion to vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried 9-0. Thank you. That was a bit of hard work in that one, wasn't it? Let's go to 12.3.2, the adoption of the annual report. Are there any questions to Mrs. Baxter on this one? Yes, Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the matter of advertising the date. Is it just through social media?
Yes, Councillor O'Donnell. I understand you were concerned about the advertising of the AGM.
Yes.
Yes, that will be advertised through the Shire's website, through Facebook and as many means as possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay, so then somebody prepared to move the motion in regards to this item, and the recommendation sits on page 38. Sorry, Councillor Chambers.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council accepts the 2020-21 Shire of Esperance annual report as presented, convenes the annual general meeting of the electors for 7 p.m. on Tuesday the 8th of February 2022 at the Esperance Civic Centre, and requests that the Chief Executive offer, pursuant to section 5.29 and 5.55 of the Local Government Local Government Act 1995 provide the requisite statutory local public notice of the acceptance of the 2020-21 Shire of Esperance annual report and the time and date of the annual general electors meeting.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Chambers. Is it seconded? Seconded by Councillor Flanagan. Councillor Chambers, do you wish to speak to this motion?
No, it's straightforward. It's a very comprehensive report. Well done to all those that were involved in compiling it. Thank you very much.
Speaker in favour. Speaker against the motion? Councillor Flanagan, do you wish to speak in favour of it, being the seconder?
I would only just add that it gives a great insight in terms of the broad spectrum of things that are delivered through the Shire and just how comprehensive that is. And I would urge any ratepayer to actually have a good hard look at it before we have our annual electors meeting.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? There's no speakers against or no amendment. I put the motion to the vote. Those please show. Thank you. That is carried. So we move on then, councillors, to item 12.3.3, lease renewal Fly Esperance Proprietary Limited Airport Car Park Hire. Councillors, do you have any questions here to Mrs. Baxter? This item. No questions? Councillors, on page 41 you have a recommendation in regards to this lease. Somebody prepared to move the... Councillor Flanagan has moved. Do you wish to read it or give us an indication of what you're moving, Councillor?
I would like to move the officer's recommendation 1 through 9 as set out.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Graham. So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Flanagan, you wish to speak to it?
I think the item is pretty self-explanatory. Thank you, Mr. President.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Graham, you indicated you wished to speak on...
Yeah, no, just like to add that it's good to see a tourist business that seems to be operating successfully and continuing to, so it's good news for Esperance. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I put to the vote. Those in favour, please show. That is carried. 9 votes to 0. Councillors, so we move on to the policy review, the External Services Policy 2021. Are there any questions to Mrs. Baxter on this one? No questions? Someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation as the motion on this item? It's on page 45. Councillor Flanagan. You're going to move the motion?
Sorry. Yes, I would move the officer's recommendation that council adopt the external services policies inclusive of amendments, inclusions and deletions as reviewed.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor McMullen. It's moved and seconded, so Councillor Flanagan, you can speak to your motion.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and the only thing I would like to add is that it was an awful lot of reading.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor McMullen, you wish to speak to the motion?
Nothing further to add.
Okay, so there's is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? Put to the vote. Those in favour? That is carried. No, I nil. It's an absolute majority. My apologies, it didn't require an absolute majority. It was a simple majority. We move on to item 12.3.5, Hicks Street hostel usage. Are there any questions you might have here on this item to Mrs. Baxter? No questions? Okay, is someone prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 49? Moved by Councillor Oborne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move The officer's recommendation that council authorises the use of 4 Hicks Street for short-term crisis accommodation upon request by relevant agencies. The CEO to enter into any such agreements on behalf of the Shire of Esperance, and the weekly rental rate to be in accordance with the Shire's schedule of fees and charges.
Thank you. It's moved by councillor Oborne. It's seconded by councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Oborne, you can speak to your motion.
We discussed this one at length, and we talked about the pros and cons and, you know, unintended consequences of opening this up for short-term crisis accommodation. But I think the way the motion is worded gives some parameters. It gives the CEO scope to authorise the use very quickly if there needs to be in a crisis. We've seen a recent example of that. And you can't wait for the next cycle of council meetings and agendas. If you're in crisis, you're in crisis by the very nature of it. And I think this is a practical solution with hopefully no unintended consequences because it's well worded.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speaker against. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak for it?
I need to say this is fantastic because if there's a premises that's vacant and there's someone in crisis, it's a perfect partnership right there, and the CEO can manage that. It's a good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. This requires an absolute majority, councillors. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried 9-0. Thank you. So we go on to item 12.3.6, Telstra Corporation Limited Lease Assignment Request to a new company. Any questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter on this one? Any other questions to any other staff members? Okay, then is someone prepared to move the motion that is on page 52 of the agenda? Is there anyone prepared to move? Moved by Councillor Chambers.
I move the officer's recommendation that council reassign the lease with Telstra Corporation Limited for lot 2112 Helms Drive, Pink Lake, to Amplitel Proprietary Limited, subject to Department of Lands approval. Reassign the lease with Telstra Corporation Limited for a portion of lot 123 Coolgardie Esperance Highway, Salmon Gums, to Amplitel Proprietary Limited. Charge a lease variation fee of $220, including GST plus per lease, and lodge a request at Landgate to vary each lease, with the leasee being responsibilities for lodgement costs.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Chambers. Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Horan. Councillor Chambers, speak to your motion.
This is pretty much exactly what it is, which is just a change of name for the people that are on the lease and a handover of the equipment.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Seconder wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Horan?
No, Councillor Chambers pretty well covered it. Right.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put to the vote those in favour. That is carried. Thank you, councillors. It's 9 votes to 0. We move on then to the numbers here, to the Financial Services Report, item 12.3.7. Are there any questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter? No questions? I take it then someone's prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 60. Moved by Councillor O'Donnell.
I move the officer's recommendation that council receive the attached report entitled Monthly Financial Management Report, incorporating the statement of financial activity for the month of November 2021.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Was there seconded to the motion? Councillor De Haas has seconded. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak to it?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak to the motion as the seconder? Is there a speaker against or an amendment? I put to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's carried 9 votes to nil. Move on now to the we go to the outstanding rate debt recovery GPC list, item 12.3.8 on page 109 of our agendas. Are there any questions that you might have in regards to this item to Mrs. Baxter, please? No questions, councillors? Okay, no questions. Then is someone prepared to move the recommendation that we have, which is on page 111? Someone prepared to move? Councillor Oborne.
I move the officer's recommendation that council acknowledge the outstanding ratepayers that have progressed to the next stage of debt collection procedure, general procedure claim.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Oborne. Is it seconded? Seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. Thank you. Councillor Oborne, do you wish to speak to this item?
Yeah, firstly I would like to thank the Shire staff in the rates department for the work that they put in to trying to personally contact people before we get to this point. I'd like to urge ratepayers struggling to make contact with the Shire, because there are ways that the Shire can help you to stay on top of your rates, and I would like to urge councillors to support this motion, because rates are an important revenue raising exercise for us, and we need to be fair and equitable to all ratepayers.
Thank you. That's a speaker in favour. Is there a speaker against? Go to Councillor O'Donnell, who is the seconder. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor O'Donnell?
I need to thank the staff as well, and to also say communication with the Shire is the best way to go if you are struggling. And this is just a standard course of action that is followed by the Shire.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. So is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? No speakers against or no amendment. I put to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried 9-0. And we go to item 12.4.1, the public transport trial, which is on page 113 of your agendas. Are there any questions you might have on this item to the CEO, Mr. Burge? Any questions? Councillor O'Donnell, you got a question? Oh, Councillor Oborne, my apologies. You got a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could please refresh my memory. Did we talk about whether there was going to be a merging of the use during school bus runs? So will there be public on the school bus run, or is it going to be?
We haven't got down to that stage yet, because they haven't determined the routes and the like. However, my initial discussions with them were that they would more than likely want to keep them separated. So I couldn't say it wouldn't necessarily not happen, but it, more than likely there wouldn't be a merging of it.
Okay. Any other questions you might have to the CEO, Mr. Flanagan, Councillor Flanagan, sorry.
Just in relation to the point I raised during the briefing last week, and just thought it might be helpful to clarify that to Council.
Yeah, so I clarified that with the Public Transport Authority as to what success might look like. They clarified that essentially six attendances essentially on the bus trial on an average would be generally successful, acknowledging that there'll be ups and downs and reasons for that over a 12-month period. And, you know, there would also be a lot of information that they would need to that they would gather over that period of time to assist them with the business case to put forward to the Minister for Transport for their consideration. So it's not like you only get you get 5.9 and you're out, or 6.1 and you're in. I think there will be some form of consideration of reasonings as to why it's good or not good, or potentially even through the period of time there might be a look at consideration of changing the route and the like, depending on feedback. And I think there's going to be a little bit of fluidity in it to try and make sure that the trial is done pretty comprehensively.
Any further questions you might have to the CEO on this item? Thank you for that information. So is someone prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 116? Moved by Councillor Oborne.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Council request the Public Transport Authority conduct a 12-month trial public town bus service, commit up to $60,000 as a 50-50 co-contribution to the trial, request the CEO bring a proposed memorandum of understanding back to Council for endorsement prior to the commencement of the trial, and fund the $60,000 from the Priority Projects Reserve.
Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Oborne. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Graham. Thank you, Councillor Oborne.
I'm very excited about this trial. People have been asking for this service for years and years, and it's always been outside of our scope. It's not really something that's within our scope of works. So to be given this opportunity to participate in a trial to help bring this service to our community is very exciting. I'm pleased to hear that there will be, heavy on consultation so we can get the correct routes and the correct timings, etc. And I'd like to thank Tracy Young for her hard work in getting it to this point in the first place.
Thank you. So then we go to, is there a speaker against the motion? Can I go to Councillor Graham as the seconder? You wish to speak in favour?
Yeah, and
Councillor.
just add to Councillor Oborne those points, and that there's a I think it would take Esperance to the next level of a town that supplies these sort of services, and there's bus assets that are sitting there for half the day that it may be able to be done quite strategically well. So thanks for that.
Okay, is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? I put it to the vote. Councillors, this requires an absolute majority. Those in favour? Against? That is carried 9 votes to nil. We go to item 12.4.2, the local government legislative reform, the feedback. Is there any questions you have on this item to the CEO? No questions? Councillors, there's a recommendation on page 118. Does someone wish to move the recommendation? No shy. Councillor Flanagan.
I move the officer's recommendation that Council endorses the attached feedback on the proposed local government legislative reform initiatives and provide a submission to both WOLGA and the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Flanagan. Seconder for the motion, Councillor Horan. Okay, you wish to speak to it, Councillor?
Only just to say that the work's been done is a pretty forensic analysis of the issues and well represented. So yeah, that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. So is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Horan, do you wish to speak to it as the seconder?
Only in part of the fact that I think it's a good move, and we did discuss it quite a lot, and the CEO pretty well covered it, and some of the replies here I think we all agreed on, so I think it's a good thing.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Was there an amendment? No amendments, no speaker against. I put it to the vote. Those in favour, that is carried. We then go on to to item 12.4.3, the information bulletin for November. Are there any questions to Mr. Burge on this one? No questions?
Can I just clarify that we just have corrected number 4 with the spelling for the Mulgret family?
No. Thank you. Are there any other questions you might have? If not, somewhere, yes, councillor.
Just a quick one. It says on hold the development Esperance Cemetery Master Plan Implementation Schedule. It says it's on hold.
Have you got a page?
Oh, sorry, page 131.
131.
Is there? Have we been told a reason for it because it's on hold?
Oh,
No.
maybe Mr.
Sorry.
Michael.
Oh, there's a couple of things. Obviously, there's a land tenure that we need to resolve, and also until this new working group gets up and running, they need to have an impact. So there's no point progressing any further until those two things are kind of sorted out.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Walker.
Okay, are there any other questions that you might wish to ask Mr. Burge or any of the other senior management team? Okay, well, is someone prepared to move the recommendation that we accept this report or these reports? Someone prepared to move? Moved by Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. I move the officer's recommendation that council accepts the information bulletin November 2021, council priorities summaries November 2021, delegations, discharge, corporate resources, and a letter of thanks to Mulgret family to Ian Mickle, 15th of November 2021.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Horan. Thank you. You wish to speak to the
No, thank you,
motion,
Mr.
Councillor?
President. I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay, is there a speaker against? Councillor Horan, you'd like to speak in favour?
Just further to the Mulgret family, the daughter went down to the BGL Adani. They gave Neville's a honorary life membership to the BGU, which he was very chuffed with. It's now down there in the BGU and he wants to see it. But yeah, good. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you for that. And so is there a speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put to the vote. Those in favour? Against, that is carried, 9 votes to 0. So then, councillors, we go to reports of committees. We've got the 12.4.2 we've just dealt with. We have information bulletin 12.4.3. So we go report of committees, which is minutes of the committees. That's page 143. So better get into the right spot on this one. Are there any questions on this item to Mr. Burge? Minutes of the committees. Okay, no question then. And so we go to the officer's recommendation. Someone prepared to move it? Moved by Councillor McMullen.
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation that council accept the following unconfirmed minutes. 1, Audit Committee, 23rd of November 2021.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor De Haas. Councillor McMullen.
Don't believe this requires any further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there the seconder? Did you wish to make any comment?
No.
Councillor De Haas. A speaker against? No speakers against. No amendments. I'll take it then. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried. We go then to item 13.2, which is the audit report, adverse financial ratio trend. Is there any questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter on this item? I think you've had good explanation of this from the CEO and Mrs. Baxter recently, so then is someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation? Yes. Yes, sir.
For the benefit of those that are live streaming that couldn't watch the agenda briefing last session, can we have a quick 30-second summarisation explaining, because people watching in might go, well, why doesn't the Shire meet the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries basic standard? So I just think for the benefit of those that may be watching in live streaming, just a quick 30-second explanation as to why we can't meet that.
Okay.
So perhaps Ms Baxter or the CEO.
Mr. Birds or Mrs. Baxter?
Through you, Chair, I'm happy to do that for you. This ratio is our operating surplus ratio, and it doesn't take into consideration the capital grants we receive for road renewal, and this has an adverse effect on the ratio. If that amount were to be included, would actually be in the positive at 1 point. The ratio would be 1.4. It's due to the fact that we have such large road networks that need renewal, and through our long-term financial plan considerations, we're attempting to close that gap as best we can.
CEO, you wish to add anything to it? No. Okay. Oh, thank you very much for that, Councillor McMullen. I think it's pretty important for everybody to understand that this ratio is one that is considered a very poor ratio, and it's been looked at by the Department of Local Government, and the Working Party is working on it. Also, the fact that every local government in Western Australia has, I'll refresh that. Every local government in rural Western Australia has the same problem with this ratio, because their grants aren't considered in the calculation of the ratio, as Mrs. Baxter has identified to everyone. So thank you for that. Pretty important to understand it.
I'd like to. Oh, sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, certainly. Go ahead, Councillor McMullen.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that Council note the action taken through the long-term financial plan to address the financial ratio that does not meet the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries basic standard.
Moved by Councillor McMullen. Is there a seconder for this motion? Seconded all over the place, but I'll go with Councillor Flanagan at this stage. So, did you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Flanagan?
No, thank you. Not any further.
Okay. Is there a speaker against the motion? Councillor Flanagan, you can speak in favour of as a seconder.
I have nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Okay then. So councillors, I'll ask for a speaker against or an amendment. No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried. And so we move on then. We have motions of which notice has been given. Do we have any of those, Mr. CEO?
No.
Members' questions with or without notice? Any members? Urgent business approved by decision. The urgent business.
So there was one late item that we proposed that we sent out.
Yeah, but that comes into that's the behind closed doors one, isn't it?
Yeah, but if you could accept that council would consider it, because you need to consider it as a late item, then it would be behind closed doors as well.
Councillors, the item that was sent out to you, which is item 17.3, if I remember, in the it is a late item, and it relates to some property, I guess I can say property sales or no, not sales, tenders. Is someone prepared to move that item be dealt with in in behind closed doors. Someone prepared. Councillor Chambers?
Yeah, I move that we accept that to be looked at in the business proposed decision, and that it's looked at behind closed doors.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers has moved it. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor has a seconder. Probably doesn't need any discussion or debate. Would you wish to say anything?
Only that I think this is important that we deal with it promptly due to the nature of it.
Is there a speaker against? Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak in favour? Speaker against or an amendment? Put to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against. That is carried at 9 votes to 0. So that concludes that part of the agenda. And it's the season to be merry, so they tell me, and it's also the good-heartedness and giving. And so I'm going to be good-hearted and give a second public question time. And we appreciated your kind words, as I said in earnest before. Dr. Newkirk, do you have another question for us? Thank you very much. Is there any other questions from members of the public that they might like to ask now? If not, I'll thank you for attending. Ladies and gentlemen in the gallery, we do have some behind closed doors, and so I'll ask councillors if someone would move that we move to matters behind closed doors. Moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor O'Born. I put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, those carried 9 votes to 0. Thank you. The doors have been trouble with it, didn't you? Boil. Yeah, I love the border pub. I know I didn't hear anybody spell that out. Okay. Well, I don't think there's anybody here to hear the outcomes of those behind closed doors. Let's close the meeting, and could I say before I do close it finally, just a very sincere thanks to everybody for your great efforts over the past 12 months. For some it's been a little shorter, but for the past 12 months